Afternoon, everyone. Now I'm going to presenting you an article. This group is consists of two members, which is myself, Chandra, Arya, Putra, and one of my friend, Jihan Safva. Let's we begin. In this presentation, we are going to talk about first introduction, research question, research objective, research method, findings, discussion, and conclusion. Introduction. In this introduction, we are about to explain in paragraph, which consists of 6 paragraphs. Theory summary, evidence summary, and the last is novelty. First paragraph explores general problem. Student learning and another aspect activity are often influenced by school. However, the result of studies are very modest with large-scale empirical evidence and large enough with small-scale empirical evidence. Although this evidence is enough to justify claims about leadership bring significant positive effect on student learning and other important outcomes. Second part about more specific problems. Moreover, there are so many mediators in effect of school leadership, such as school goal setting processes and goal consensus, school culture and climate, decision making and processes, program and instruction, resources, teachers' expectation, commitment and attitudes toward change, institutional organization, sense of community, and an orderly environment. In brief, because of these mediators, it is understandable that the effect of school leadership in students are largely indirect. Third paragraph talks about the solution from previous research. According to the previous research and empirical evidence, a new conception of how leadership influenced student learning was found and named 4 paths, which will improve student learning. These paths are rational path, emotion path, organization path, and family path. Each path has different sets of variables with different impact on each student's experience. For examples is the variable for rational path, both classroom and school level variables such as knowledge and skill of school staff members about curriculum, teaching, and learning. Fourth and fifth paragraph talks about the advantages or weakness of the solution. For the rational path, the variables are rooted in the knowledge and skills of school staff members about curriculum, teaching, and learning that includes both classroom and school level variables. Then, there is the emotional path, which includes the feelings, dispositions, or affective states of staff members, both individually and collectively, about school-related matters. Next is the organizational path on the variables, which include features of school that frame the relationships and interactions among organizational members, including, for example, structures, cultures, policies, and standard operating procedures. The last is the family path that provides as many family-related variables as possible. With all the paths that already mentioned before, the quality of student school and classroom experience is improved as the status of variables of each path increases due to effects from leaders and other sources, resulting in greater learning. Leaders should pay attention to variables that need to be strengthened on all paths over a long length of time. Sixth paragraph talks about the solution that the writer applied to solve the problem. In this study, conceptualized and measured as a set of practices distributed among staff rather than netted only by those in formal leadership roles. Our review of evidence about the effects on students of the variables selected to represent each of the 4 paths included summaries of evidence about specific leadership practices that have been demonstrated to improve the condition of each variable considered separately. Ideally, a test of the four-path model would include a measure of leadership reflecting most or all of these practices. However, the measure of leadership used in this test has a narrower focus due to the purposes of the larger project providing the data for the study. So the writer will conduct a confirmatory factor analysis on all measures of variables representing each the four paths and correlation between all variables. The literal path analysis program was used to test relationships between leadership, the four paths, and student achievement. Theory summary that the writer used to prove his or her dead claims. Data writers get were analyzed using the literal 8.80 analysis of covariance structure approach to path analysis and maximum possibility estimates. Writers used forgottenness of fit statistic to access the fit of their path model with the data. Furthermore, the readers analyzed student achievement effects separately for each of the math, reading, and writing scores, as same as the most combinations of the scores. Since the pattern of result did not change much depending on which of the scores were used, the result reported below are limited to the average of grade 3 and 6 math scores and the average of math, language, and reading scores, both grades 3 and 6 combined. The evidence summary, fact, experts' opinions, or research result that the readers use to argue the issues. First is in academic this research using the online teacher survey to collect evidence to represent rational, emotion, and organization path as well as leadership. Furthermore, from that online survey, the reader gets several results. First is in academic press with an alpha coefficient of 94. Example of this item is such my school sets high standards for academic success. Second is this disciplinary limits. Example of this item is like students do not start working for a long time after my lessons begin. And the last is leadership, which including 17 items were derived from several sources. The first item assessed the extent of leadership distribution in the school. Leadership in the school is provided by many teachers and administrators. Evidence that used to represent the family path is students access to adults support in the home for school and access to a computer in the home for schoolwork. This evidence provided by questionnaire response of students collected as part of the province administration of annual test of reading, writing, and mathematics. A novelty or something new in the paper or research. The first novelty is in the argumentation in third hypothesis. The argument of third hypothesis is in previous research says evidence reviewed in the section provides no justification for expecting different effect on achievement of the two variables selected to represent the organizational path. On the other hand, the result that the writers get is support this hypothesis, although neither variable is significant predictors of achievement. The second novelty is in the argumentation in fourth hypothesis. The argument of fourth hypothesis in previous research says that evidence in this section justifies a fourth hypothesis, though this hypothesis does not completely reflects researcher observation about the choice of variables to be included as part of family path. On the other hand, the result that the writers get is no evidence support this hypothesis. Moreover, the two variables on the family path behave very differently. The second one is research question. In this part, we are about to show you the research question that we found in introduction. The first research question is how the four paths can influence school leadership in student learning in Canadian province. The second research question is Which path is strongest direct effect of leadership among the four paths for student learning in Canadian province? And then we are going to talk about research objective. In this part, we are about to show you the research question that we found in the research objective that we found in the introduction. The first research objective is to develop the four paths for influencing school leadership in student learning in Canadian province. And the second one is to identify the strongest direct effects path for leadership among the four paths for student learning in Canadian province. And the research method will be explained by my other friend, Jihan Safva. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Arya. So, right now I will explain a little bit about the research method on the slide. Okay, so in this part, we are about to explain you about research design, research setting, research participant, data collection method, instrument, and data analysis method. Next slide, please. Okay, so the first one is research design. So in this journal is using quantitative research design, which the data is collected from a teacher survey administered in the spring of 2009. The setting for this research is taking place in Canadian province. And for the participant subject or object of the research, the participants of this research were about 1,200 principals from the majority of the province 72 school district. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so next is data collection method. This research using online survey system that aim to the teacher for evidence and data. So the fifth one is instrument that is used to collect the data. The using instrument is several of the multi-item skills that was adopted or adapted. From this kind of instrument, writers found a big amount of data such as academic press data, disciplinary climate data, collective teacher efficacy data, teacher trust in parents, students, and colleges data, uses of instructional time, PLCs, and leadership data. Okay, so the last one is data analysis method. This research using list rail path analysis program as a data analysis method. List rail is an acronym for linear structural relations. This kind of method is used to test relationship between leadership, the four paths, and the student achievement. Okay, so we move to the findings. So in this part, we are going to explain to you the research findings. So the four paths model as a whole explain 43% of the variation in student achievements. Variables on the rational, emotion, and family paths explain similarly significant amount of that variations. Variables on the organizational paths were unrelated to student achievements. Leadership had its greatest influence on the organizational path and less influence on the family path. Next, please. Okay, so we move on to the discussions slide. Okay, so we got a little bit summary from the study that we already read before. So the writers conducted confirmatory factor analysis on all measurements of variables representing each of the four paths and correlations between all variables after computing means, standard deviations, and scale reliabilities. They used four Kutnesov fit statistics to assess the fit of their path model with the data. the root mean square error of approximation test or RMSEA, the norm fit index or NFI, the adjusted kindness of fit index or AGFI, and the mean root mean square residual or RMR. Then they examine the effects of math, reading, and writing scores on student achievement individually, as well as most combinations of these scores. Because the patterns of results did not differ significantly depending on which of these scores was utilized, the results provided below are confined to the average of grade 3 and 6 math score, or in figure 1, as well as the average math, language, and reading score from both grade 3 and 6, like you can see in figure 2. The writer put the results into tables. Table 1 reports descriptive statistics for each of the variables measured in the study, and Table 2 reports correlations between all variables from Figure 1 and Figure 2. In Table 1, the mean responses to variables on the three paths for which teacher provided data falls within the fairly narrow range of 3.51 for discriminatory climate to 5.90 for teacher trust, and the aggregate organizational path scale fall just below that what is normally considered to the acceptable minimum, or 0.59. Okay, next slide please. Okay, in Table 2, figures 1 and 2 were calculated separately for 5 different measures of student achievement. Figure 1 reports the effects of leadership and an aggregate measure of each of the 4 paths on average math achievement in grade 3 and 6 and produced 36% of the variation in combined grade 3 and 6 student math achievement across school. All path tasks are shown in this figure: significant paths with solid lines, insignificant paths with dotted lines. For figure 2, it reports the effect of leadership and each of the 8 specific variables representing the 4 paths on achievement and account for 43% of variations in achievement across schools. Figure 2 includes significant paths only. In order of strength, leadership is significantly related to PLCs for the results 0.69. Academic press, the result is 0.33. Instructional time, the result is 0.30. And the teacher trust, the result is 0.28. It is only weakly but significantly related to CTE, result is 0.10. Their variables on the 2 paths directly and significantly contribute to student achievement. One of these relationships is positive, for example, like computer at home, that the result is 0.34, and 2 are negative, for example, like instructional time, the result is 0.23, and adult help, the result is 0.16. The results shown in figure 1 and 2 show that there is a lot of instruction between the paths. To get a sense of these interactions, look at the figure 1. There are strong root convergences, the result is 175, between the rational and emotion path, as well as lesser but still significant correlations between the rational path and both the organizational. The result is 0.33, and family 0.20 path. The rational and family paths account for the greatest amount of variation in student accomplishment, or 26% in each case. The impact of family paths is mostly to the availability of a computer in the home for doing homework. The result is 0.34. Adult help at home for schoolwork, part of the family path, demonstrates modest but significant negative effects on achievements. The result is minus 0.16. Next, please. The emotion paths, out of the two remaining paths, account for 21% of total explained variation in student accomplishment, while the organizational path has weak negative effects on achievement. The result is -8%. Leadership's total direct and indirect benefit on achievement are small yet considerable 11% and 50% in figures 1 and 2 respectively. Among all hypotheses that the writer explained in this study, three results deserve to be highlighted. First, some variables has larger effects on students' learning than others did. Most recent studies of leadership effects on students have included a restricted number of mediating variables, sometimes just one. Although these studies undoubtedly add to growing understandings about how leadership influences students' learning, the effects they report are likely exaggerated for methodological reasons, and their value for leaders' decisions making is quite limited. Exaggerated effects arise when there is little or no competition in regression equations for explanation of variation in achievements. The limited value for leaders' decisions making arises because such decision making entails, or if should entail, weighing alternativeness. So studies of trust, for example, often provide compelling evidence about its effects on teaching and learning. Okay, next, please. A second key finding of this study is that the path influenced most of leaders or organizational had the less influence on students' learning. In the context of the larger project providing data for this study, principals had been strongly encouraged to work together in principal learning teams in their own district and to develop PLCs in their own school to help with school improvement. The writer's results point to a problem that arises when leaders neglect using relevant evidence, limit their use of evidence to student achievement, or are naive data users. The conception of leaders' work embedded in our four paths model encourages leaders to select as a focus for their attention variables for which there is robust evidence of effects on students. A third key result of this study was that the path with arguably the most untapped potential for leadership impact on student achievement or family was the recipient of essentially no leadership influence. The benefit of parents' involvement, this evidence indicated, are not confined for early childhood or the elementary level. Children from low-income and minority families have the most to gain when school involve parents, and parents do not have to be well educated to help. Considerably more research corroborating these claims is now available. It would be difficult to identify a more important focus for school leaders aiming to improve the achievement of students in challenging family circumstances. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, we will jump to the conclusions. Okay, so the conclusions. Okay. The goal for these articles come from important issues faced by leadership practitioners and researchers. Therefore, this article has described and tested a new response to these important issues or challenges. All of this response claims that leadership's influence flow to students' experience and learning along four paths that are rational, emotional, organizations, and family path. The writer's empirical study of this conception tests 6 hypotheses. The first result indicate that both variables representing the rational path had a significant and very similar effects on student achievement. However, the two variables representing emotional path had quite different effects. In addition, there are no variables representing organizational path that made a significant contribution to student learning. But the writers speculate from their result that the variables on the organization path create preconditions for gaining other value on the other paths. Okay, so next slide please. This test of the four paths model has significant limitations. First is the restricted measure of leadership practice. Second is the choice of variables to represent each of the four paths was limited. Third, an important assumption underlying the study is that the categories of variables matter, not just the individual variables. Because of these limitations, this article suggested several implications. One of those implications is the extensions of what it means to make an evidence-informed decisions. Okay, so that is all from our presentation of article analyzations. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Me and Arya will close our presentations, and thank you. See ya.